Hi everyone, this is Divided Films, the podcast where we talk about movies that audiences and critics do not agree on. I'm JJ, and with me always is my co-host Keith.
Hello!
And today with us, our special guest, I would say, is a jack of all trades when it comes to movie making. It's our good friend Adam Volerich. Hello, Adam. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Adam, best known for his short film Tyrannosaurus Death, which is currently streaming on the online film journal Bright Wall and Darkroom. And you can find all of his work at adamvolerich.com. Volerich, Volerich.com. So hopefully I didn't butcher that.
That's all right. Good enough.
And today we are talking about the 2005 version of the movie King Kong, directed by Peter Jackson and starring Jack Black, Naomi Watts, and Adrian...
Brody.
I was like, please don't forget anything. Okay. Adrian Brody. Okay. Almost made it. So, this movie falls into the category of having a positive score with critics and a negative score with audiences. So that's 84% approval from critics and only 50% from audiences. And the critics' consensus, little paragraph here, featuring state-of-the-art special effects, terrific performances, and a majestic sense of spectacle, Peter Jackson's remake of King Kong is a potent epic that's faithful to the spirit of the 1933 original. So, what do you guys think of this disparity here of King Kong? I mean, I was surprised to see such like a lower score from audiences. What do you think that would be?
I actually have a very strong idea of why I think audiences don't like this movie.
Oh yeah, what would that be?
So, first of all, I kind of think that anytime an audience score is that low, it typically has to do with expectations being left unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And the majority of the time that, I think, is caused by marketing that is designed not to represent the film properly, but to get people in their seats. So after I watched the movie, which I loved, by the way, I went back and I was like, I actually am curious what the trailers for this film look like. I have no memory of them. And I watched all the trailers, and they are wildly inaccurate. They represent the film purely as an action-adventure movie.
Jurassic Park 4, basically.
Kind of, yeah. And I think that the most interesting thing about that, and is kind of my central thesis on what this movie is that if you, about an hour into the film, when they are about to get off the boat and go onto Skull Island... Jamie Bell's character, I can't remember the name of, but he's like the ship hand that had originally stowed away. Mm-hmm. He, the whole movie, has been reading Heart of Darkness.
Yep.
And he gets to the point in Heart of Darkness where things start to go wrong. And he turns to... I
Hayes, I think?
Yeah, Mr. Hayes. He turns to Mr. Hayes and he says...
Willie, right? Is the...
Yeah, Willie, something like that.
Yeah,
Willie or Billy.
Billy, yeah, it's Illy. Illy.
And he turns to him and he says, "This isn't an adventure story, is it?" And he's like, "No, Billy, it isn't." And then he quotes some of the text from Heart of Darkness.
That sums it up, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. But I also think that to take it one step further, if you look at Heart of Darkness and you look at, say, Apocalypse Now, which is based on that, uses that source material to tell a story about the Vietnam War.
Yep.
The general thesis being that, like, civilized imperialistic forces are just as, quote, savage as, quote, savages. Mm-hmm. And if you look at King Kong, what King Kong is doing is it is not only adapting Heart of Darkness, it's also adapting the making of Apocalypse Now. And Jack Black is not only Colonel Kurtz, but he's also Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, yeah, that's really
and that's
cool
kind of my big like mic drop take on like what this on one of
Don't
the
drop
many
the mic.
things. Yeah.
This is very expensive.
Actually, wow.
But it's of one of the many things that this movie is doing.
Oh, that's really cool. I kind of
Yeah.
like that double play of like, you know, what this sort of movie could be standing for and trying to convey. And, you know, Jack Black is, I think, one of the main kind of like points of divisiveness in this movie.
It does seem to be the case, yeah.
You know, I like Jack Black, but I feel like he's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I feel like, though, as much as I like what he's doing, I don't know if he really fits into this like 1930s Depression era as well as some of the other actors.
I didn't know he was wearing a wig the entire time. He got a haircut and Peter Jackson didn't like it, so
that's funny.
I guess
it matches his hairline from the
I thought
time
it was,
period
and then
really
when I
well.
was looking up the facts for this movie, it's like, did you know that Jack Black wore a wig? Like,
that's funny.
Yeah,
it's a good wig.
Speaking of,
I thought it was his hair. Yeah.
Speaking of expectations, this is Peter Jackson coming hot off of the Lord of the Rings.
Right,
movie.
This is after Return of the King has
He
won the
got
most Oscars.
One of the biggest movies.
He
still
got
to
like
this
no
day.
directing paycheck for this movie, like $20 million. Like,
Wow.
I really think the studio expected something, and he really wanted to pay an homage, and I'm kind of curious about the behind the scenes.
It's kind of an interesting story, at least how it first started, because Peter Jackson, from like interviews I've seen, he said that the original King Kong movie, seeing that made him want to become a filmmaker. So it kind of is this nice like full circle moment where after making this like landmark franchise, Lord of the Rings. Now he's being asked to direct basically his like childhood favorite film. So I think that's kind of nice.
The passion
it's
is
really
there.
cool.
The passion and love for King Kong is there.
What I also like about Peter Jackson's touch of this movie is some of the more like horror elements.
Yeah, absolutely. The scene where they drop down into that cavern and there's all the giant insects is one of the most upsetting things I've ever watched.
I still have a hard time.
Ugh, it makes my skin crawl.
Probably
just
one of
thinking
the
about
worst movie deaths is Andy Serkis' human character.
I think that's the
it.
first
Oh my
time
god,
we see it.
what's his name? His name was Lumpy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Really?
I think so.
Oh,
I wrote it
wow.
down because it was so funny.
Oh, that's wild. That was like so horrible, and it was played as like a scary scene. Like the music is like very ominous. And
Howard Shore does a fantastic. I think there's a lot of good points of this movie.
Yeah.
Looking into the audience reviews, you do have a lot of people who really love it. It is like split down the middle.
Yeah.
The length of it, the pacing, the tone.
Length is hard for a lot of moviegoers.
Well, that's the other thing.
The
like,
acting,
like
people,
he's
the performances for
he's
some.
making 3 different movies.
Like
every hour of the film is a whole new movie.
And maybe that's why it was hard to market, because you have the dinosaur-centric sequences, but the beginning of the movie is this very like homage send up to like Depression era entertainment,
right?
Old showbiz.
It's about how spectacle becomes the only source of comfort in a time of great like economic downturn, which is like a well documented like phenomenon. Like if you look at like automobile sales, cars with vibrant colors, the sales of them skyrocket when there's an economic crash, because it's like people want something shiny and bright to look at.
That's interesting, because I know that like vaudeville though essentially died in the Great Depression. So that, but then then maybe like cinema took over entertainment, and this movie also kind of captures that. Naomi Watts is like a vaudevillian actress in this movie,
right? And I remember when I was going back through the trailers, most of them were basically just scenes of Kong fighting the T-Rex.
Yeah.
One of the trailers is Jack Black. It's a supercut of like a bunch of Jack Black's like monologues, and it's basically like somewhere out there's a woman who's born to play this role, and it's all centered visually on Naomi Watts doing the showbiz stuff. And then at the very end of the trailer, there's like Kong screaming. So they really just like, they were like, I guess we'll market this 1 hour to these people, we'll market this 1 hour to these people, and in doing so, you kind of don't market it accurately to any single group.
It's kind of hard to sum up everything this movie does in like a 2-minute trailer, or even like a TV like 30-second spot.
Yeah.
You can't really perfectly sum it up that way.
Yeah.
Do you think I can understand like they're trying to sell this movie, but do you think that also happened during the movie, or at least the writing? Because they're, especially a lot of Skull Island, it does, and even the scenes end up being like Jurassic. I'm like, is this trying to be Jurassic Park 4? Like, I remember I did watch the director's cut.
Oh, you did?
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
and then I watched the regular
So
version.
I watched the theatrical before coming here because I was like, okay, we're talking about the critics versus audience, and what they're discussing is the theatrical.
But
cut.
I have seen
So
the director's cut in the past.
I have it at home because I bought the 4K Ultimate Edition for this.
You
So I was
are a
like,
fan.
So I was like, I'm gonna watch this in like the best possible quality to
Yeah.
really like get my head on straight when thinking about it. But I was reading that the only like major thing that you see is in the extended cut is there's like one more scene of them making the movie within the movie, and there's something with a sea monster, and I was like, okay, I don't like need to see that.
See,
I
I
can
remember
live without it.
I remember. There's one scene I would have replaced with the sea monster, and I guess maybe this movie did win for special effects, and I think at the time it deserved it, especially for Kong and that like groundbreaking. You know, all the
motion
stuff
capture.
the motion capture.
Yeah, and digital fur
I
technology.
mean, we can talk about the Brontosaurus scene later, but that scene I would have maybe swapped out with I did enjoy that swamp monster scene. I was expecting that, and
Okay. Well, you know, this is interesting too because this is like also back-to-back collaborations of Peter Jackson and Andy Serkis doing, you know, the motion capture.
Right.
And I feel like every time I've seen that, you know, Andy Serkis is like the king of that. You know, like, and then we got to see him do it like 3 times with the recent Planet of the Apes franchise, and I feel that's a major highlight for me. I think,
he's so good at bringing humanity and like an emotional, just like something you can really sympathize with to a CG creature, to a non-human actor.
I thought that was
really impressive,
especially like as Caesar. You know, Caesar becomes more of a human. Kong stays an ape and brings humanity to it.
Yeah.
I think that's very amazing.
I think that was compelling. I think that is I think that still holds up too. Is at least for me the King Kong motion capture effects.
Yes.
They didn't. I feel like maybe like some parts of this movie look a little dated, but I think for the most part, it still looked really great.
It did, yeah, and I'll say like watching it, you know, in 4K with a high dynamic range transfer, like it looks incredible. Like, even though the movie is now 15 years old, it's one of like the best looking movies from that era, I would say. And not all of the effects hold up, but so many of them do, and that's so rare with any kind of CG that is even 2 or 3 years older than the current day that you're watching it.
It's and who can predict if something will hold up in the future? So that's maybe not even a fair standard. But it does speak to it when it does hold up. Maybe like as a bonus, like thumbs up for the movie retroactively. And we were when we talked about in a previous episode, like for example, like Armageddon. That was like right before this era, like where King Kong was like the explosion of CGI, and like that really has not held up. This might be one of like one of the earlier movies with that kind of CGI that does last when they are finally kind of getting it right.
I think one of the things that Jackson did really well in Lord of the Rings, which then works well in this movie, is the way he blends CG effects with practical effects with like practical environments and shooting it all on 35mm film. I think he kind of loses sight of some of that stuff when he makes the Hobbit films, but I don't really want to dig into those because that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do think this is where he's right on the border of that, because so much of this holds up really well and works really well, but there are 1 or 2 sequences where it's an all-digital Kong running around an all-digital environment. He recreates some of the 1920s Manhattan purely digitally, and there's no humans in the scene, there's no built set, and it looks like a PlayStation 2 cutscene. You can see where they've cloned buildings and just tried to add texture and shadow, and that's the stuff that really doesn't hold up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I always appreciate that kind of blend. I love practical effects, and right now I was saying Adam is wearing a hat that says "I love practical effects," which I really appreciate that. And I mean that was one of the things that people really loved about the Lord of the Rings movies too, right? Was like how much of it was practical, and I'm glad he's still holding on to it at this stage in his career. And I think that with the New York sequences, part of that maybe like doesn't as hold up as well for me because so much of that is where he's doing more of the homage to the original movie, like when he's up on the Empire State Building and you even have some of the lines repeated, like, it was beauty that killed the beast.
Right.
And for me, when it comes to remakes, I'm always more interested in the new things brought to the table, and I get a little impatient with kind of just repeating things from the original version just because, you're doing the homage. Like, like you're trying to send it up. But we already know that stuff.
Yeah.
I'd rather be surprised with the new take, and that's why I like the more like horror elements that he brings.
Yes.
Do you guys know how like Peter Jackson kind of has roots in like
He started
horror?
off making low budget horror movies.
Brain Dead, Dead Alive, that kind of stuff. So
Frighteners.
I like this is such a big budget blockbuster movie to be able to sneak in that like very underground level of like horror. I kind of appreciate that he's able to get that in there.
Yeah, and it's just nice to see a director like continuing to have like the same sort of voice throughout their career. Like obviously he's growing and changing, but you can feel him in the film, which is always nice.
And that's when she sees it.
Sees what? What?
The island.
We're filming on an island now? When did this happen?
Shh, Jack, keep your voice down. I don't want the crew getting spooked.
Why would they get spooked? What's it called?
All right. It has a local name, but I'm warning you, Jack, it doesn't sound good.
I am happy. He wanted to make this throughout the 90s, and they were going to make it in 98, or like 97, 98, but they already had Mighty Joe Young. And I think the studio said, we can't have two giant apes. I think they were like, we can't have two giant apes.
One per decade.
I'm happy he made this after Lord of the Rings, where he kind of, like, his style is so prominent in this movie.
Yeah.
Especially during the horror sequences, like when the tribe, like, King Kong's on his way.
Okay, so here, I have to jump in and say that on rewatch, the stuff that I really didn't like was the portrayal of the native tribe.
No, not the portrayal, just when they arrive.
It's so atrocious.
It's old-fashioned, and that, again, is kind of going back to this old way of portraying, like, other cultures, indigenous cultures. It's old Hollywood again, but not in a good way.
Right, so he's so tied down to this idea of, like, what was that? What would it have looked like back then? I'm gonna make it the way they would have made it. Like in the same way that you were like, we don't need to see 'twas beauty that killed the beast. We also don't need to see a really dated way of showing a native tribe. And to make things even worse, and this was something I've seen this movie so many times. Just as a quick sidebar, when I was in my senior year of high school, I had a case of mono that lasted 3 months. And one of the only movies I owned on DVD at the time was this movie. And when you are like bedridden like that, all you do is just lie around watching movies. So I watched this movie maybe like once a week for months. So I know it inside and out. This was the first time I'd watched it on a massive screen since watching it in the movie theater. And watching it in, 4K with all the detail, I realized for the first time that when they bring Kong to New York and they do the stage show, it's all white people in blackface on stage with him playing native tribesmen.
I did have that thought. Did they cast actual people of color? Or did they
No,
I was thinking
it is and it's just like I get it. You're trying to do it's the 1920s and to when Kong is outside running through Times Square, there's an ad for Amos and Andy, which was a sitcom where you had white people in blackface. So I understand what he's doing, but it's like, dude, you didn't have to do that. You really didn't have to do that.
Absolutely not. And in fact, I kind of brings up an idea of mixed messages, because they're kind of sending up this era in an affectionate way.
It's it's looking at through rose-colored glasses.
But then, if you want to send it up and kind of paint a pretty picture of it, then don't include that. Either be this is what it is objectively, but then you wouldn't have the stylistic way of portraying it. So you have to kind of pick one side or the other.
Or if you're gonna show it on screen, point out that you show it so you can have a commentary on it. Show it to be this was bad. We shouldn't do this.
I was when I wasn't talking about the natives per se. I was talking about when there's that shot where there's a screech, and that close up that he does in his movies, like Lord of the Rings. I just okay, that's the shots I'm talking about. That his horror roots. I agree with you about the natives. I just remember
there's this other thing that's going on during the native sequence that really bothered me, which is that choppy slow-mo.
Oh, the low shutter speed stuff.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm like not as technically.
So the way so if you think about like something like Saving Private Ryan, which has the hyper realistic stuff in the action sequences, that's achieved by over cranking the shutter speed. So you're capturing more. Like the shutter is rotating faster, so you're getting essentially like a shorter exposure on every individual frame, and so you're getting more detail in it. Whereas with this, you're getting a longer exposure on each individual frame, and so you're getting less detail and heightened motion blur.
It just seemed to me like there was so much of that in that sequence.
He overdoes it,
That I was like having a hard time following the action, and I find it a little disorienting. So and that's a kind of
that's intentional though. Like that's. I mean,
he does that in Lord of the Rings,
that's also
too.
what you're kind of. Yeah, he does it when like the orcs are picking up Pippin and Merry.
That's it, yeah.
But we're taught that like in film school. Essentially, it's like heightened. Over cranking the shutter speed gets you heightened reality. Like slower shutter speed creates the effect of like disorientation. You might use it if you're trying to show that someone's on drugs or if they're really drunk. And I think in this situation, he's trying to show that these people are having trouble processing like the fear and everything around them, and so everything is slowing down. But they're not experiencing reality as they should be.
Well, it is at that point like. It is like almost like that is like shifting the gears at that point, because like the first hour leading up to that, it is like almost like a totally different style and tone.
Right.
So,
the first hour of the film is essentially a movie about how the entertainment industry has done Naomi Watts dirty. Like how like she's like an incredible performer, and I mean like the whole first hour is about how beautiful she is, and like the fact that she should be. Having this better career, and then it just becomes this terrifying herd of darkness stuff.
It's a very like clean polished movie, and then you get to the island, all of a sudden it's like blood and like all this crazy stuff is going on. And that's interesting what you say about Naomi Watts, because it seems like Adrian Brody falls in love with her like at first sight, right?
Yeah,
and then Jack Black,
and so does King Kong.
Yeah,
it's that early like filmmaking, like that love at first sight like trope, like as we said, it doesn't. A lot of that doesn't translate well. I'm still trying to think if Adrian Brody was right for this role.
The thing is, though, is Jackson has always been a really sentimental filmmaker. If you watch any of those Lord of the Rings movie, like. There's so many scenes between like Sam and Frodo that are like lit the same way that like beauty shots of like Naomi Watts are lit in this film, and they're just like giggling and like smiling at each other because they love each other, and that's all.
I'm not too hard on the movie with that, but it is noticeable.
Yeah,
the one thing with that character Billy or Will, I'm gonna say Billy,
Jamie Bell,
who actually like he actually behind the scenes talked in his American accent. I'm still trying. He was on the island.
He does. He sneaks off the boat onto the island.
That's right.
Yeah. No, his backstory. I mean,
what do you mean? So his backstory is that he was a stowaway.
He was a feral child.
I don't know about feral.
I was looking because I was so confused. Like they found him, he couldn't talk.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'm.
Wow, he's not from Skull Island.
Well, part of me was like, are they? When I first saw this in the theaters, this was another event movie. I remember it being
totally.
And I remember
big Christmas release.
I remember thinking like, oh, he's going to be the like Skull Island, because when he is reading, he finds the notebook, Andrew Brody's notebook or the script.
Right.
He goes like, I know, I've been there. We don't want to go there. That's what I always thought. But he was a stowaway who couldn't talk, and Hayes kind of became his father figure. And it was just confusing at first. But I don't think he got any. Jumping ahead, I don't think he got any closure to his character. But that's,
once the Skull Island sequence is over, he's not even in the movie anymore.
He should have had closure, at least in some way.
His closure was watching his father figure get thrown to his death.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
That character, just like you invest so much in, and
and again, this is part of the problem with the treatment of the native tribe and the use of blackface is that like the one actual person of color who has a significant speaking role is murdered, and in like such a throwaway bullshit way. Okay, so I do want to circle back briefly to this Heart of Darkness thing, because
Sure.
I just got really like into my own head thinking about this. But I was thinking about, again, like expectations being fulfilled or not being fulfilled, and I was looking at the audience rating of Kong Skull Island, the 2014 Jordan
I was
Vogt
going to bring
Roberts
that
film,
up with you.
which is a film I actually also really like. But that film is doing, I think, what audiences wanted from this film, which is they wanted the big adventure film they were promised, and that's what they get with Kong Skull Island. And Kong Skull Island, like this film, is also referencing Apocalypse Now. But instead of referencing it in terms of like the plot and in terms of the themes it's exploring, it's referencing it in the visuals. It's like it's the movie is set during the Vietnam War, and it is using like shot for shot like recreations from Apocalypse Now. And I just think it's such an interesting like parallel that both of these King Kong movies went to that as like a piece of source material.
Yeah, I mean, the Kong Skull Island one is like so much more popcorn of a movie, and
It's really good time.
Those are,
it's fun.
totally. And then those homages are more surface level. You know, you kind of there's like the one like helicopter shot, which is like, wow, that is like a,
you expect
perfect
Flight of the Valkyries to start playing.
Yeah. It's an interesting like difference there, because I think that movie is divided in the reverse way, where critics, they wanted more substance, but audiences were like, no, like that was great. That's what we want. You go straight to the island, and you're there the whole time, basically.
I would say this movie takes the themes of the story of Heart of Darkness, while Skull Island takes the themes of the war from Apocalypse Now.
Sure.
That's because I would say Skull Island has a lot to say about the Vietnam War, it has stuff to say about the Vietnam War. And it goes in that lane as obviously. King Kong is 1940. It takes place in the
30s,
early
early
30s.
30s. Early 30s.
So it's just like it's more about the story itself and the themes. But I do think that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Mr. Denham! Mr. Denham! Take the tripod! Come on! I'm pulling you up! Hold on to your ankle! No, I'm not going anywhere without you! You're gonna leave me! Hold
on! What do you guys think about the other cast members? We've been mentioning Adrian Brody here and there, but Keith, I think you mentioned that you thought you might have been like wrong for the part.
Adrian Brody was both Adrian Brody and Jack Black were really like coming off. They were hot at the time. Like they were hot. School of Rock came out like 2 years before.
But Adrian Brody is at least known for dramatic parts, so I feel like it wasn't as strange of a casting choice.
He's a lead, but he's not an action lead.
Okay.
Or I know this is not an action.
A romantic lead, maybe.
Well, okay.
The other actor who, seeing this movie again, the guy from Kyle MacLachlan,
Kyle Chandler.
Kyle Chandler. He would have been a good lead now.
No, but that's the whole point. That's the inversion. And he even, I wrote down the line because I thought it was so good.
He was a good snarky main actor.
So Kyle Chandler, when Adrian Brody, when he becomes like the hero of the film on Skull Island, he's like, all right, everybody, we got to mobilize and do this stuff. Yeah. Kyle Chandler is like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Yeah. What are you talking about? And he's like, I knew you were nothing like the characters you play in the movies. And Kyle Chandler says, heroes don't look like me in the real world. They've got bad teeth, they're bald, and they've got beer guts. I'm an actor with a gun who's lost his motivation. So I think that he's perfectly cast, and I think by virtue of that, Adrian Brody is therefore also perfectly cast because he's meant to be that guy. He's the guy with like a little bit of a receding hairline. He's got a big nose. He's not your typical like hot leading man. He looks like a writer, but he becomes the hero.
Yeah, that's
he's he's the one that's like, I'm gonna go and get Naomi Watts out of here. So I think. Because you cast those two guys against each other, that's why they each are perfect for their roles.
Right. But then they kind of go back on the Kyle Chandler line because he does swing into the insect cavern, which
I love. Is a fun scene, but it's also like
completely.
It doesn't.
He would not have done that.
Yeah.
I'll defend Jack Black. I thought Jack Black actually kind of.
I love Jack Black.
I think Jack Black was.
I like what
and
he's
Naomi
doing.
Watts. Like I thought she was perfect in this too.
She is perfectly cast. Yeah.
I would say that Jack Black is the villain villain of the movie?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good.
That's what I'm saying. He's Colonel Kurtz and he's Francis Ford Coppola, who famously, like, essentially became Colonel Kurtz while making Apocalypse Now. He would do things like use the film's budget to fly in his favorite steak from New York every day. He would send people into, like, jungle territory without, like, proper protection. He would every morning fire someone just for the sake of firing them.
Oh, wow.
Like, he went completely out of his mind. And there is a documentary about the making which is just as fascinating and dark and messed up as Apocalypse Now.
You got Dennis Hopper hopped up on heroin, trying
Yeah.
and I think a young Larry Fishburne also experimenting. You got war, you got floods. That's an interesting way to look at
that's
it.
why I think that's what Jack Black is meant to be doing in this film.
Yeah, because I've heard people say, "Oh, I don't like his character in that movie." It's like, well, you're not supposed to like him. You know, he's a morally apprehensible person.
Yeah.
He's basically his fault. All these people in this movie die for nothing. That's essentially like what really is.
He keeps giving this speech. He keeps giving this speech whenever someone dies.
With a wife and kids.
Yeah, he's just like, he didn't die for nothing. He died doing what he loves, and we're going to finish the movie for him. And all the proceeds are going to his wife and kids.
He says that a couple times, which is funny.
But to add to your subversion of Adrian Brody, I think the audience is expecting lovable Jack Black, and you in the beginning he's charming enough for you to say, "Come on this journey with me," and you find out how despicable he is.
I have more to say about that because I've spent the last 6 or so years working as like a producer and a cinematographer in the film industry.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you the number of directors I've worked with who are just like the Jack Black character, who are incredibly charming and really good at selling you on like why you should work with them on their film and like how cool it's going to be and how exciting it is and all the amazing like vision they have and what they're going to allow you to do creatively. And then you get to the set and the set is like a horrible, disgusting basement where you have to like wear like a bandana over your mouth, otherwise you're going to get bronchitis. Wow. And like there's no food because there's no budget for craft services, and like we're going to work 18-hour days because we don't have the location for enough time. And it starts off with this vibe of like, okay, this like kind of sucks, this isn't what I was promised. But we're going to make it through. Very much like, you have them getting on the boat and they're okay, well, this boat sucks. It's not a cruise liner like I was expecting, but I guess we're going to go to Singapore and it's going to be fine. And it turns out you're not going to Singapore. You're going to an uncharted island where like you're going to get murdered and there's a giant monkey. Mm-hmm. And like that is my experience working in independent film oftentimes. I mean, not literally, going to a deserted island, but like you get talked into these things by very charming people. And then you realize that they're completely full of it, and they're going to just keep abusing you until you finally either like break or you say no and you get yourself out of there.
Yeah.
And more often than not, you don't get yourself out of there because you're trying to protect your reputation and you don't want to be have it known by other people that you're not a team player. And what Jack Black is doing in this film is making everyone be a team player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Your whole career has been Skull Island.
Yeah, you can maybe say that this movie is like an allegory for like the filmmaking experience for so many people.
I mean, and again, that's why I say he's playing like a Coppola type in this movie.
Yeah, so you're not supposed to like him. But I remember like the first time I saw this, and I was like stressed for him, because it's like. They leave the office and they're like, it's like they have an hour to get all these things arranged and everything. Like, I felt their anxiety, so I feel like the movie almost tricks me into rooting for him until, like, everyone's dying and he is, like, so, like, I don't want to say apathetic, but his priorities are in such the wrong place.
The raptor thing, I don't know what crew member that was, but he's like, "Give me the tripod!" And he's just like, "That's where his
Herb, the cinematographer.
Herb got it bad.
I'm like,
you don't see it, but
there's a lot of moral horizons for this. It's like, for Jack Black's character, and it's just I think it does kind of people go in expecting School of Rock, and it does like. How long can you root for this guy?
Well, in that case, you sound like you're the Colin Hanks character, who basically you're agreeing with him the whole time, but then you're questioning it along the way, but you're still there until you get whipped in the face with a rope And
No,
then at the end, you're all salty.
You're
about
lumpy.
it.
No, I'm Herb for sure. I got killed trying to protect the camera.
You get eaten by raptors?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
for
that's
sure.
the worst way to go.
That's absolutely me.
As
okay.
long as I don't die by bugs, I
Yeah.
still think.
Oh
that
my
scene
God, the
gives me
bugs.
the
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, no, that's the worst.
That
Getting
scene
eaten
gives
by
me the-
larvae.
that is the most upsetting.
I thought those
scene
were
to watch.
leeches.
I think they're giant leeches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought
Which
they
is
were...
also when the cricket is jumping on. I'm like,
Oh, God,
it's
stop.
just like no, but
Oh,
that's,
you know what really
that
really
scene
freaked
is
me
just
out
like-
when the one guy is trying to crawl up the wall and the bug pops out of the like cavern wall out of nowhere and gets him. How many people
I
died?
feel so sorry for the red shirts in this movie.
There's so many of them.
You during the Brontosaurus scene, you do hear a Wilhelm
Yes.
scream,
Yeah.
Yes.
like very prominent.
This wouldn't be like a Hollywood send-up without the
I know.
Exactly.
I do kind of think it's like a rule that if you're making a movie like this, you have to have a Wilhelm scream.
Yeah,
Like, you're not allowed to skip that.
You got to put it in somewhere, and this
Yeah.
movie has plenty of opportunities. And then not only people are dying on Skull Island, but in New York City too. Like a bunch of people
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
have died. But again, it's all for nothing. Like what? There's nothing is
Well,
accomplished.
You're right. Nothing is accomplished. But it goes back to the Heart of Darkness thing, which like again the thesis of that is that like civilized men are just as evil as like quote evil as quote savage men. So
Yeah.
you have again Jack Black who's turning King Kong into a way to make money, and he's doing it even though he knows it's dangerous, and he doesn't care if or even if he cares, even if he's horrified by what happens, he's willing to take that risk as long as it serves him, and that is just as quote evil as people who are like, I'm going to sacrifice someone to this giant monkey so that like the sun keeps shining.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it's interesting because even it's like he's always like looking for an opportunity to salvage whatever he's
Right.
doing. So even at the end, after he's lost the film, he still is thinking, well, what if we bring Kong back to the island? And then I think a few more people die during that sequence.
Yeah.
I think Kong bites off a guy's head.
yes.
Is that right?
Yeah,
And it just never ends with him.
yeah.
So at least that theme is consistent. Did you guys like the third act New York sequence? Do you think that maybe dragged at all? I mean, did it feel at that point you're at like the 2.5 hour mark?
I like it because that's where you get all the closure on Naomi Watts' character.
Mm-hmm.
The scenes like leading up to being on the Empire State Building are all really great. Like you've got Kong like causing all this havoc, and then you have this stunning shot of Naomi Watts walking down the street. And all of old-timey Manhattan is like blurry behind her.
Yeah,
They've got
that's
all
nice.
this like soft focus on her face, and the film circles back to it fulfills the promise that it made you at the beginning of the film, where it's like, this is a movie about Naomi Watts' star power, and like you, the audience, are going to get to see that, and you're also going to get to see this giant ape, this monstrous but beautifully human creature. Stop being violent and like crumble because he's so blown away by her star power.
Yeah, yeah, she can tame like a giant gorilla.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think when I first saw this, and I was in high school when this came out, I think I was feeling it at the time how long it was, and I guess I was more on the audience side of feeling like not into these I guess quasi romantic scenes.
Yeah.
But now that I'm older. Maybe you've seen way more movies and way more patient. I actually was feeling, empathy for the King Kong character, and I was enjoying the chemistry between, King Kong and Naomi Watts. And at the end, when he the shot right before he falls off, he gives her one last look. I did feel really sad for him.
Yeah.
Because
I like the ice skate. I like that.
I mean, again,
Audiences,
it's a bit
cheesy.
of that Jackson sentimentality. It's a little too
Audiences,
much, but
It is cheesy.
the people that were critical some of them do mention did they need to be ice skating? I'm like, I liked it when the movie slowed down.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if the movie didn't slow down, there wouldn't be any heart or sentimentality to this movie.
You just have to admire a film that just fucking goes for it. It's so big and loud and so much spectacle, and then it's like, yeah, and now we're going to take 5. We're just going to calm down, and we're going to have a really nice little moment.
Shifts gears again.
Yeah.
You know, like for
That's
like
a
the
good
whole
point.
middle
Yeah.
part of the movie, you're kind of like speeding. You have all like that crazy dinosaur action sequence, the bugs. Like it's so much adrenaline for most of the movie, and then you shift gears right when you get to New York City, and it is a little exciting when he escapes the theater. But it is, it's sweet again, and it's interesting to kind of shift gears that way. I do think it's funny though. Can you imagine being in 1930s New York City, just walking down the street, and all of a sudden a giant fucking gorilla pops out of an alleyway? Like I would lose my mind. I would think I was like drugged or something.
Yeah.
I get a kick out of like these like bystanders who have like totally no idea what's going on, and then King Kong just runs by.
Were you okay with the length?
Yeah, I don't begrudge any movie inherently for being long. I think if the pacing is bad, then that's a problem. But I don't think this is a poorly paced film. But it is super long.
Do you think maybe it took a little too long to get to King Kong? I feel like it was like an hour 20 in when we finally see him.
Not necessarily. I mean, again, I think that's part of why the audience doesn't like this movie, because the movie's called King Kong and it takes almost a whole movie for you to meet him. But that didn't bother me. But again, like I'm kind of here for all the character setup.
Yeah.
I'm here for all of the in order to feel it when Jack Black becomes this egomaniac who's doing all this horrible stuff. It's so important that you're rooting for him to get to make his film by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And it's important for you to see Naomi Watts struggling so hard to be an actress that she considers becoming a burlesque performer, or I'm vague whether or not that's burlesque, whether it's like actually full on stripping or whatnot.
Old-timey stripping.
Yeah, I guess so. Very classy.
It says
but,
old-timey stripping
yeah.
on the
Very
marquee.
classy.
Yeah, and it's I think all that build up is important, and I also I guess basically my thing is, I never have a problem with the length of a movie. I do feel like when I am going to choose what movie I'm going to watch, I do sometimes not pick a movie if it's like over 2 and a bit hours long, because I'm like, well, I have other things to do and I can't necessarily devote all this time. But as long as the film uses that runtime wisely, it can be as long as it wants.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the runtime length, I feel like it's justified, right? There's a lot of movies that don't justify the long runtime, and I don't think it feels long for me, but I think some audiences were feeling the runtime. And I don't know if in this era, 2005, if it was that common to have movies this long. I think there were some those old epic ancient movies were common at the time, like Troy or something like that.
The old Ben-Hur and Lawrence,
they were bringing back some of those kind of movies, but I still feel like most blockbuster movies were
studio blockbusters probably not going to be 3 hours long.
I think Peter Jackson was the only director at the time, because of Lord of the Rings, who could make the epic King Kong he wanted to. I feel like I'm now going back and forth of because there were some scenes where I'm like, it's on Skull Island. I feel like a lot of things could have been shorter, but I think when something says an epic, when you say I'm going to make an epic, I'm with you. 3 hours. 3.5 hours director cut. That's it's the length of an Irishman.
That's tough. But back in the day, these epics were that long in the 40s and 50s.
I'm kind of okay with it, but granted, some scenes on Skull Island, tonally, just I'm like.
Well, you know what? I actually feel like, if anything, I would say the ship sequences leading up to Skull Island is where maybe for me it drags a little bit. I mean, I get they're trying to build the chemistry between Adrian Brody, Naomi Watts, and everything. But I just feel like that part for me, I can't remember too much that happens during was it the 20 minutes there you see them on the ship on their journey?
Yeah, I mean the scene from that section that stands out to me the most is when they are shooting scenes from their movie on the deck, and Adrian Brody is standing next to Jack Black and the cinematographer, and Naomi Watts is meant to be having this deep sad expression, and she's killing it. It's so good. And then she looks over and sees him, and she breaks character, and that's the scene that stands out to me.
And Jamie Bell, Jack Black can see he's looking through the actors, and you can see Jamie Bell whispering Skull Island, like we're going
Right.
to Skull. I remember that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the boat sequence, like
Yeah, maybe there's some fat you could trim from there, but I would actually say to me, and this is probably not what most audiences would have wanted, but the stuff for me that dragged, I didn't even drag because I was like, I'm just curious to see how the effects hold up, and I want to watch this, but the like 4 or 5 different locations we keep changing to on the island for King Kong to beat up different giant animals. It's like there's a lot of T-Rex fighting. That
T-Rex
could
sequence
maybe
is a
be a
long
little bit less than that.
I was even confused because they set up the first 2 T-Rexes, like Naomi Watts runs into one, and then another, then King Kong comes, and then right as he's about to fight the 2, a third one comes out of nowhere. I'm like, 3 T-Rexes?
Yeah, and then they fall down a cliff, and they go to a grassy knoll, and he rips the thing's skull open. And,
then he plays with the broken skull.
Yeah, which is a nice touch. I do. There's something really
the curious creature.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Like, maybe this movie has fat, but sometimes it's fine to have fat. You can call it healthy fat.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be
there's omega-3s in there.
Yeah. Not everything has to be like, getting you where you need to be. Sometimes it's nice to kind of have just something that enhances your experience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of movies by really good filmmakers who know how to have good scenes, these fatty scenes that maybe don't directly advance the plot, but they still make it's still enjoyable to watch. So not everything has to be like this formulaic thing where like get from A to B to C to D.
Right.
You can take some time to have some, some exciting action or some sentimentality.
I feel like everyone, if you like said, what's your idea of King Kong? Write your version to 100 people, you'll get 100 versions, and I think it's good that Peter Jackson had this passion and he wanted to. This is my version.
Yeah,
and the flaws and all, because it does seem that people like us, we're even saying, but people who are critical of it or just more like meh. There are certain parts of it that does drag, but as a whole, maybe it's like you get a sandwich and you're like, I don't like tomato. You like the sandwich.
We compare movies to food a lot on this podcast.
Okay.
That's how I'm seeing it as, because even the parts that I'm like, I wasn't a big fan of the Brontosaurus scene. I don't think that holds up.
Mm-hmm. That's probably the worst of that. And
I would replace it with the fish.
Kong running through Manhattan with no physical stuff, and the Brontosaurus thing are probably the 2 effects that have held up the worst.
But that doesn't necessarily detract it from my viewing of it. That's just
me neither.
It's like, hey, you gave it a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, like you
Try
tried
some
something,
things,
and
and that,
it is a little PS2-ish.
The thing that's important about the Brontosaurus sequence is you see Jack Black being more interested in saving the camera than saving people, and you see Adrian Brody beginning to be heroic.
Yeah,
and
like for those characters.
So if you're tracking the character beats, like that's why
you couldn't cut it.
Yeah,
I understand why you couldn't cut it,
maybe done
especially towards the end,
but
the it's very PS2-ish. At least how I was watching it, and you could see the Brontosaurus, just like, wow, they're really good at running under these legs. Like the red shirts in this, get crushed. If you're lucky, you're lucky.
There's some really brutal deaths that are really quick, getting stomped on. I have to say, I think ultimately this movie does make me care. I cared the first time I watched it years ago, and I haven't really seen it since its initial release. And I still cared. I think I cared differently this time around. I care more for King Kong than I did, and that's a credit to Andy Serkis and his motion capture performance. And even I got to the point where I talked back to the movie at one point when after he dies and the reporters are all around his body. I think one reporter goes, why did he corner himself by climbing up there? And the other reporter goes, oh, he's a stupid monkey. What does he know? And I actually said back to the TV, you're a stupid monkey.
Right.
Screw you, mean reporter man.
No, I love that moment as well.
It's you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Little things like that. I'm you know what? If this movie any movie that gets me to care is, I have to say, is good. I feel I don't know if I've ever seen a movie where I care about the characters but ultimately felt that it was bad. I think it's hard to do that,
especially with a 50-foot 8.
Yeah.
You don't know. I always think one of the best scenes that definitely sticks out in this movie and kind of sticks out on its own is when she's trying to make him laugh and doing the pratfalling.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's like an 8-minute, 10-minute scene.
Yeah.
And it's so well. It's like that's the scene that stands out hardcore, and that sells you on both her and especially Kong.
Yeah, I think that's like the real triumph of this movie is like making Kong a sympathetic character and sort of using Naomi Watts's like star power as a way of doing that.
Yeah.
And she's so good at reacting to what was probably like a tennis ball on a stick.
That's true. It's tough when any actor who's performing against like not another person. That's tough. But
I heard he was on set, but I don't know how you can like a.
Well, I mean, even if he was there for the sake of her eye line, which would have always been 20 or 30 feet in the air. Yeah. So unless he's on some kind of crane that they're getting out of frame, there would have been like a point for her to be looking.
They hologrammed him.
They do a good job piecing together like them reacting to each other.
Yes.
Like that. I totally was. It made sense the whole way through.
Yeah.
I said no! That's all there is. There isn't any more.
There was one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about Kyle Chandler, because I was thinking about how this movie is, whether it's directly paralleling any particular figures or not, it's definitely talking about archetypes. So you've got like a floppy-haired writer, and then you've got this very hot, beefy hero guy. And especially when you've got that altercation between him and Adrian Brody, and he's talking about being an actor with a gun who's lost his motivation. I was just kind of like thinking about that, and I was like, I wonder how other actors of this imagined era, and or rather the era being referenced, were they like the people they played on screen? So I was looking it up, and like you find out that like John Wayne comes from like a pretty rich family and like never did a day of like farm labor in his life.
Yeah.
And I found this quote from Humphrey Bogart. I was born to be indolent, and this was the softest of rackets. So he's just like a guy that like didn't want to do anything physically demanding. He's not a tough dude. He just wanted a job where he could like go and play pretend. You know? And I think that's a really really cool idea to be playing with.
I think all you need is that like gruff looking face.
Yeah, and it's because like that's something everyone knows now.
Yeah.
But back then, I'm sure people like always assumed Clark Gable was just as charming, or whatever it was.
Right.
And that's definitely like something from that era.
I kind of like the opposite. Like Jack Lemmon was in World War II. Like Christopher Lee. Well, Christopher Lee also played a villain, but Jack Lemmon was like the Tom Hanks everyman.
Right.
But he was in World War II, and like he was fighting Nazis. Like he was a war hero.
I think with what's the actor's name again?
Kyle Chandler.
Kyle Chandler. I enjoyed him in this movie because I like the idea of someone from his world. Like you can tell he's this like privileged guy, kind of being like dragged into this like crappy boat on this like crazy adventure.
It's great.
I get a kick out of him being put in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
I don't know, something about his presence. I want to say grounded it for me a little bit. I don't know. He just seems to be.
Well, because he's like, I'm sick of this shit.
Yeah,
know?
He seems to be like the most aware of how like insane it all is.
Yeah.
So I like that.
I was just happy. I'm like, oh wow, he was a lot more like. I do remember him being in this movie, but it's more like, oh wow, this movie was 2005. This was probably during like Friday Night Lights, all that. It's like, oh wow, he's been around for a while.
Yeah, he's been he's been in movies for a long time. The other thing about the Brontosaurus sequence I forgot to mention is that my favorite part of that sequence is that Andy Serkis is smoking a cigarette while he's running away from the Brontosauruses and like choking on the smoke, but still smoking the cigarette.
That's great. That is great. There's never a reason to give up your cigarette when you're getting chased by dinosaurs. That's pretty good. I liked his human character too. I wonder why they decided to give him like the worst death I've ever seen in any movie.
Probably because he was like, I can act the hell out of being eaten by imaginary leeches. And like no one else in the movie's going to pull it.
Just picking it like, okay, who wants to die? There is one line that I I did like that fish sequence. I'm sure it's online, like that the deleted scene.
Uh-huh.
I do think, granted, the movie would have been long. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I don't know that
director's
the
kinda
movie
stringing that out.
needed more stuff on Skull
But
Island.
it's definitely a fun sequence.
Yeah.
But they make it to the other side of the lake, and you see this red shirt come out, and Jack Black is just kind of checking the camera, and he's recording it, and it's like, is everyone okay? And the red shirt goes like, I am, and you see the fish just grab him in.
Oh.
And
you know what?
correct-
I've watched that scene actually.
and I remember Andy Serkis going like, "You get that shot too." It's like I was like, that one line would have been
That's
great
good,
somewhere
yeah.
else too.
Yeah,
Like,
but you know
like,
what?
you know,
The
like,
moment of the
that's
guy
really
that
going,
would have been a lot of that's a very effective line.
the moment
Yeah.
of the other guy though going like, I'm okay, and then immediately getting killed, I feel like is like a very predictable.
That's
thing
true.
That's been
I
done
feel like
a
I've
bunch of
s- I've
times.
seen
Oh,
that
you can
in plenty
totally
of
see in the
movies.
like. I remember one of the other deleted scenes was like, I think when they first King Kong took Anne and ran. They're like, we gotta go after her, and they're running around in the dark, and like a Triceratops comes in, and it's basically that's very theme parkish, just like bah, and,
Yeah.
and it's just like, okay, yeah, you guys.
Well, you know what's so
Could've cut that.
funny? So I was in LA over the holidays, and Eric and I, we did like the Universal Park and studio tour, and they actually have a King Kong sequence on the studio tour where in your like little trolley car thing, you go into this like, I don't know, tunnel like place, and like you put on your 3D glasses, and they simulate a sequence from this movie when you're getting attacked with like the dinosaur sequence. It's a little dark though. I mean, King Kong comes in to save you, but at one point there's like an animated studio trolley that falls into like the insect cavern. It's like, oh, so those tourists didn't make it out of this alive? It's just kind of dark.
That's great. I
You
love
see,
that.
see them with like Mickey hats on.
They're all like, ah, as they're falling to their death. There's like children on there. Like,
That's great.
Jeez. Oh man. There's a weird touch to that. And it was, they shake you around and stuff. It was
Of course,
kind of
yeah.
fun.
How else are they going to do it?
And that's actually where I heard that story, Peter Jackson saying like, oh, this movie inspired me to be a filmmaker. So
I love that. I love that. That's why he made the movie.
Yeah, and because like you mentioned, this was after Lord of the Rings, he had that freedom. They gave him the budget,
Right.
and he was able to add those more like his own personal touches.
And even homage and copycatting aside, I think even his like philosophy towards making this film is such a great homage itself to the philosophy of making that film, where it's like, yeah, the point of this movie is it's the spectacle. We're like doing new and interesting special effects that audiences have never seen before. Like very famously, there were like lines round the block for people trying to see this movie when it first came out. So I like that he's always kind of had that spirit. Like I like filmmakers like him, James Cameron, George Lucas, or Rodriguez. Even when they miss, even when they make a messy film, it's always kind of a glorious mess because they're always pioneering some new technology that is going to change the shape of filmmaking for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to not love a film like this, or a film like Avatar or Alita Battle Angel, like even Mortal Engines. Any of these films made by these people who it's like, okay, was that an A+ movie? No, but like I'm always gonna go to bat for that kind of film.
Yeah, just like the very idea, like let's like try something we haven't done before, because
Yeah.
that's like the spirit of filmmaking, isn't
Yeah,
it? I mean,
absolutely.
Creating this world, and
Especially if you're a filmmaker with enough like cultural cachet and studio confidence that you can do whatever you want. You should do whatever you want. You should push boundaries. I prefer you push storytelling boundaries, quite frankly. But if no one else is going to bother using that cachet to push the technical boundaries and try new things, then they should do that. And I'm glad that he did it with this movie.
It's a very nice love letter with.
Yeah.
I think he just wanted to make a love letter with like, I have the technology, especially more so than I would have wanted to make it in the 90s.
Right.
Like I have the technology, I have the carte blanche to make
Right.
the story the way I want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I probably would not have held up if it was made in the 90s. I mean, that's, like again, that's like the earlier days of CGI.
No one really talks about the
he-
1977 one.
Oh
I
no,
haven't seen it.
With what's his
Jeff
name?
Bridges and
Yeah.
Jessica Lange. No one really. I mean,
Wow.
that's part of the
That's an
lexicon,
interesting,
but no one
combo.
really. When people think King Kong, of course, there's the 1933 one, but I would say most people kind of. I think Andy Serkis was an excellent King Kong,
Yeah.
and I'm.
Also a second unit director on this film. This is believe this is technically his directorial debut.
Oh, okay, very
Not
nice.
then. Oh, I know he did that movie with Claire Foy and Andrew Garfield.
That's recently, though.
Recently, yeah.
Yeah.
You're, okay, yeah. True. That's another... I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, no, very nice.
That's it, folks. Show's over. Step back. Clear the area. That's it. Shove off, boys.
Why'd he do that? Climb up there and get himself cornered. The ape must have known what was coming.
He's just a dumb animal. Doesn't know nothing. What does it matter? Airplane's got him.
It wasn't the airplanes. It was beauty killed the beast.
Okay, well, I guess we can maybe, end this discussion with our own personal, approval rating for this movie. So, Adam, do this now, just starting us. What would you be your percentage, your approval rating for this King Kong?
So, I think before I watched it this week in prep for this episode, in my memory, the movie was probably getting like a 92 or a 93. My rating's still high, but I'm dropping it down to an 89 specifically for blackface.
Okay.
Like I was so bummed to just see that. I was like, it's such a bad object that stains an otherwise like interesting and exciting piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's too bad because it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
In many regards. Keith?
It's not often I talk about this movie or even think about this movie, and we've raised a lot of good points about. I do think the audience score being so low is because of expectations, and maybe they weren't in the. A movie like this is a right place or right time. A 3-hour movie, you have to kind of be prepared to watch a 3-hour movie, and if you're not getting action, you're getting slowed down. That will bring the audience score. When you watch it at the right time, though. I would give it about an 8. Like, this is an 80 for me. I think the pros definitely outweigh the cons. I don't even think the cons are that bad, but it's not something. I think the rewatch for me. I think it's maybe every 10 years. It's not something I go out of my way to watch, but it's a good movie.
Yeah, that's interesting because it was such a highly anticipated movie. It made a lot of money, and at the time, people were talking about it. But
it didn't make a ton of money compared to its budget. I
really?
looked it up.
It wasn't the big hit.
It had a $207 million budget, and it made only $218 domestically. So it did $550 worldwide, but domestically it just about broke even. And I would imagine that with marketing costs, it probably still ended up in the red.
It needed to be like that 3 times, but it kind of just was barely making that double.
Because it's not a movie that, like you said, people rewatch a lot, or maybe like because I feel like time is a really good test for movies that
right.
Like what
no one talks about this anymore.
Yeah, it's like why is that?
Except on this podcast.
Well, maybe we'll reignite that discussion with other people. I'm not holding it against it. I just think that's interesting. Like, why is this the movie that? Maybe is it overshadowed by the fact that it's the same director's Lord of the Rings, and you're going to talk about Peter Jackson. You're talking about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
maybe not this one. My score actually is going in a different direction than yours. When I was younger, I'd probably give it like in the 60s or something. But now it's shot up way more for me, and I do really appreciate what this movie's doing, and I think it's an achievement in a lot of regards. So I would give it also I give it like an 82.
Cool.
Peter Jackson, I think this is a nice story for him. Again, full circle.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm happy for everyone involved in the movie. I like Jack Black. I'm glad he gets this kind of recognition from like a big Hollywood movie studio. He's in there. Naomi Watts, who I really enjoyed in The Ring.
Yeah.
Which is another divided film, by the way, which we'll have to do another time. It's just all around, I'm happy for everyone involved. So 82 for me. And
that comes out to 83.6. Well, if you round up, that is the critic score.
84, right in line.
that is the critic score on the dot.
Well, look at that.
Perfect. Well, then I will decree that we are siding with the critics. So thank you, Adam, for stopping by.
Thank you for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
I'd
love to come back.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and hopefully we can have you again.
Yeah,
sometime.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
But
I'll come defend something else.
Yeah,
you should start a podcast, dude. I think you have a lot of film stories and just tidbits that
Yeah, I did even the behind or the technical education there. I appreciated too, just kind of knowing the more how these different effects work. So thank you for
it's a
teaching
pleasure.
me
Yeah.
a little lesson there. So guys, thank you for listening, and join us again next time for another Divided Film. Thanks.